So as mentioned before, there's different categories of ways to induce lucid dreams. This might not be totally comprehensive, but I think this covers most of the ground here, where there's these cognitive/mental techniques, things like keeping a dream journal, different techniques like wake back to bed, reality checks. Like that's the foundation. And I think any lucid dreaming practice should be built upon that foundation. But definitely seems like there is a role for more of these external supplements and external stimuli with devices. Once we can get the science and technology right there as complementary pieces to those mental techniques. And that's in the green square here, because that's what we're going to focus a lot of the discussion on in the event here today. And yeah, we talked about this a few slides ago. Devices that help to induce lucid dreams, I think they should have good combination of sensors and stimulation. So the right sensor set to be able to do real-time REM detection, and then once that's detected, have some kind of effective stimuli in that time window when somebody's more kind of susceptible or able to get into a lucid dream. We've definitely seen some good demands here, judging from some of the crowdfunding campaigns on sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. A lot of these devices have been definitely exceeding their goals, but definitely not really exceeding expectations at this point. Unfortunately, like none of these devices have really been proven to be that effective for the masses at this point. And I really think that's an opportunity. I think inevitably we're gonna get to that place as we learn more about how the brain functions, and as technology advances, I'm definitely optimistic that we will eventually have products that hit the mark to be able to induce lucid dreams on a more reliable basis. And I think it's going to be a combination of, they got to have the effective dose, it's got to be targeted the right way, you got to time it at the right time of the sleep period. Obviously it's got to be safe. We don't want to compromise on safety, and sleep is super important. You don't want to disrupt that, at least not overly disrupt it. It should be user friendly and intuitive. And then, yeah, I think to gain mainstream adoption, finding ways to add more value beyond just lucid dream induction, I would have this as more of like a nice to have, not a must have. But I think it only gets more compelling if you can do things like sleep stage monitoring with that device, if you can do things like improving slow wave sleep quality with the device. Again, I think that would only help to increase adoption of such a lucid dreaming device over time. And then I think this is my last slide to kind of tee up the discussion here, more around external supplements. So yeah, there's been a variety of studies out there. The best evidence has been with galantamine here. There's a 2018 study demonstrating pretty good ability to induce lucid dreams, or at least increase the probability of it at both 4 milligram and 8 milligram doses. And there's a couple of good books that touch on supplements. There's this Advanced Lucid Dreaming, the one I'm holding up here, and I have linked at the bottom. That's the one that gets into the most depth here about different techniques to use supplements. And typically you got to think about like, what is the release kinetics of the supplement, and try to time it for those those REM periods that are more elongated later in the sleep period, and maybe containing more of the activated type of REM, the phasic REM. So that is my high level overview, just to kind of like plant a few seeds and get people on the same page about supplements and devices. But I think the majority of the event will be talking about different experiences with some of these devices and reviewing some of them, and I think even more importantly, talking about how we could improve and progress the field forward going forward to try to make these devices way more effective than what they currently are. So Dash, did you want to kick it off with either talking about the in-lab experience, or any other place you want to start it? It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share my screen, but if not, maybe I could just send you stuff. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I might need to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
If you're not able to do it, I'll I'll stop sharing mine.
Okay, let's see. Oh, this is good. Okay, that's, wait, did it work? This is
Yeah,
the
I'm seeing llama life.
wait, how come? Oh, okay, I see. Okay, so you're up here. All right. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, llama life.
Your desktop is way cleaner than mine.
That's my second screen. The first screen I'm navigating through right now, trying to figure out where the page, oh here. Okay, this is the page. So okay, this oh, I wanted to share the REM Dreamer Pro first, because this is like the one, what's like this is the like one device I had, the like, well, yeah, that like I bought. So can you see it in here? Because it won't let me expand it any bigger for some reason.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
There's
so
a
it's pretty
I
much,
see a video.
yeah. Okay, it's pretty much like, I think it kind of looks like the Nova Dreamer, at least from like the pictures I've seen, but basically it's got, I think it's got like an infrared camera somewhere around here where the goes over the eyes. And okay, oh, okay, you can't really, there's this like little speaker like that goes, it's kind of, okay, it's not the best video, but it goes like along this strap. So they use light, and then they have a LED, so they're detecting REM with the infrared, and then they have like an LED. One side of this is infrared, one side of it is the LED, I think. And then they have this, this is the cord here, but it goes along the strap, and by your ear, this cord attaches to a little microphone and speaker, so you can record yourself like saying, Dashel, you're dreaming, which is what I had mine say. And so they're kind of like trying to copy, I don't know, I think this is used like in a lot of labs maybe, but yeah, they're using light and sound to try to induce lucid dreaming, and they're using infrared to detect REM. But so when I use this, it was like kind of, it was really uncomfortable. That was the first thing I noticed. It's very flat. So I had to add like makeup. If you've ever seen like makeup sponges that look like a slice of like cake, I had to like add them to the sides to like give it some roundness. Like the worst part of this was just like it wasn't comfortable, and I feel like it would like, it could have easily been made way more comfortable, and I just like couldn't sleep with it. And I had to like put it on only for wake back to bed, because like I just couldn't sleep with it from like the beginning of the night to it was like it was way too uncomfortable to sleep for long periods of time. So only for wake back to bed I could use it. And it was hard to tell if it worked. I did get lucid from it, and it was hard to, or like I got lucid, but I couldn't tell if it was from the actual device, because I think I like thought in my head, Dashel, you're lucid. But then later I thought, oh, was it the speaker that made me think, like, was it the sound of the speaker, or was it actually like my internal monologue? So it didn't noticeably work, and it was like too uncomfortable to try multiple times. So it was kind of cool. It was sort of expensive. It like had these like claims that it had like these really cool features, but I couldn't really, it didn't seem like it actually had them. Like it had this feature of getting brighter and brighter until you give it like some sort of signal to turn it off. Like, so if you didn't get lucid from the first blink, it would get brighter. The next blink would be brighter, and then it would keep going until you gave it some sort of eye signal. But I remember when it was on, it was doing something like that, and it just didn't really map to what the guy claimed that it was supposed to do. And so I don't know, I didn't really trust this device, but it was like a cool idea. I feel like the execution wasn't very good, and it was super uncomfortable. And I was just like, I can't sleep with it if it's uncomfortable. And then my next experience with like, I guess you could say like electrically or whatever tech induced lucid dreaming was in the lab. and it was interesting because it was really similar to the, like, it was similar to the features that the mask had, but it was just it was like what you would actually want to happen. So here, wait, let's see. Okay, so you're in this like cube, this little like closet basically where you sleep, and this is where the scientists, in this case Karen or sometimes Remee, are over here, and the dreamers all hooked up with a bunch of electrodes. These are actually way more comfortable than wearing the mask. I can sleep with electrodes. It's a little like, sometimes you're like kind of self-conscious, like, oh, will I pull them off? But I rarely do. And it is a lot more comfortable to sleep with all of this than any mask I've tried to sleep with. But they use the same kind of induction sound and light, but it's just like done a lot better. It's somebody who like is paying attention to your actual physiology, and they know when you're in REM, and they that's when they're flashing the lights, and that's when they're doing the sounds. And Karen has her own like special like intuition about it, and that, you know, she looks for like certain things that she thinks are helpful in timing the induction just right. So whatever she does is a lot better than the detection that I've seen with different masks.
Can I say something else about that?
Yeah.
So also noting that a difference being the pre-sleep part of it kind of being critical, at least for newer people, that like it's not just the light that they like. We go through a little bit of effort to pair the light and the sound with like a mindfulness and a lucid reflection little speech. So we think that that has something to do with the way that they work, as opposed to the home devices where you might do that on your own, but it's not really part of the requirement. It's kind of like you just kind of go to bed thinking the light will do the trick, and we don't think it's necessarily just that.
Interesting. Yeah. There's like a whole training part to it that these other devices miss. And yeah, this was just like, after I experienced this, I was like, oh my God, like, first of all, I hate the mask, and it's just so much better if you're being induced by a light in the room, or like something not on you, except for the electrodes. Electrodes don't bother me. So that's when, after I had experience with the lab, I like tried to make my own version of, and it is here, I could show it, but it's basically like, instead of a mask, it's an LED strip like hanging on a piece of cardboard that you just like hang over something. I like clip it to something like a lamp or something, and it's just hangs over. And mine doesn't have sound, but the sound personally for me doesn't work so well. I think Karen and Remee have seen that it works better for certain people. But yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I think it's very individual. Like, different stimuli work different for whatever, different chemistries and different people. And for me, the light works better. And yeah, I think
That's a cool thought, though. I didn't think about that, how the ones at home also are always masks, and like just translating that to just like a USB light or something is probably a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like hated the mask so much. And when I slept in the lab, it was just so much better.
Yeah, most people don't like the mask. I also I'm not a huge fan of having to do that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, kind of like with reference to your thing about how like when people do it, like we've been working on these algorithms for lucid dreaming and wearables, and one of the things that we found in our testing is there's like a lot more to it than just like you do stimulation when people are in REM. In fact, it seems like the first thing that kind of happens when you start doing stimulation is that people often, the signs of REM kind of go away for a bit. And so, but if you then stop the stimulation, people don't like nothing really happens. So kind of there's lots of weird rules you kind of have to use about like how much REM do you wait for? How long do you keep doing it after the REM ends? And it seems like there's a lot of these other parameters that have to be right to make it good at even just being noticed in the dream.
Right. That's what Karen talks about, that it's just like, it sounds like this like very fine dance of like enough light to be seen, not watching if you're waking them up, watching, like she even says like she watches eye movements, because if there's like too much eye move, you don't want to like flash the light when there is eye movement, because then they may be distracted and looking at something else. And a lot of this, like I asked her recently, like, oh, like, isn't that true? Like, you're not supposed to flash the light during the eye movement. She's like, well, it's a little bit like based on intuition. I'm not totally sure. A lot of it, I'm figuring out on the fly. So it's there's a lot of components, and I think like just having a person do it, like who's like also just being like intuitive, and just makes like a big difference, but it's kind of an art, and there's still a lot of questions that that would be hard to put into a device. Although with like a lot of data, you could like have AI figure those things out, but we don't have a lot of data on yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like run a neural network on limited data sets of people becoming lucid or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically like what we've been trying to do with this, like, with this Fitbit based approach, is we have a neural network that takes the Fitbit data. And yeah, I think it's possible to do, but there's also we went through 4 or 5 iterations of it where we just had to tweak stuff. So I just think it's more complicated than just detecting REM.
Yeah. And I just feel like you would have a really what kind of data are you running through it from the Fitbit? Just like REM, like a polysomnograph and the Fitbit or something? What do you, I don't know, it might be complicated to explain, but.
Yeah, so we started off with, we just had people wear the Fitbit in our lab while we also manually scored their sleep. And then we have a neural network that takes the motion and the heart rate data from the Fitbit and says, predict what we would score that data is. And so what we found was that was good at predicting when things would be scored as REM, but there's a lot of kind of post-processing you have to do on that data to actually make it good at inducing lucid dreams, is what I was mentioning. So for instance, if it only plays the sounds when it thinks you're in REM, people usually don't notice it. So you want to just have REM turn the sounds on, and then the sounds basically continue until you get some response from the person. And that seems to work, I think, a lot better, because some of the signs of REM, I think, go away a little bit when you give people a sensory stimulus often.
Interesting. Okay. I think that's all for, well, I have something I wanted to share, but I could share it later. The other thing about the tech that I was talking about.
Yeah, we could bounce back and forth a bit here. Seems like we need to automate the Karen intuition process. It's kind of interesting. Like
Yeah.
there's like I see like kind of different analogs across different areas. I'm thinking of like sleep coaching and health coaching, where you have a human in the loop and you try to automate that more and more as you get more data and you label that data over time. I could see a similar approach here if we can somehow kind of decipher what Karen is kind of naturally doing, and then translate that to the right, kind of automated way of doing it over time.
Well, if you had like a lot of data of the people who are like wearing the Fitbit, and you're like recording their their reaction, couldn't you do like a neural network based on like their reaction to the sounds? Like it sounds like you're kind of doing that, or you're like combining that with like just straight up coding like if statements or something like that. Oh, your sound is off. Hold on.
Thanks. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Like, can you, instead of having like the prediction target be REM sleep, have the prediction target be kind of like, is this like what do we need to do to make the person lucid, or like, is this in a good state for lucidity?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I think we could. We've acquired a lot of data now from this app experiment, so I think it is something that we could do, but I don't think anyone's looked at it yet.
So what you guys are doing, wait, can you explain that again? You're detecting when they're in REM, and then you have to play, you find that, what was the thing you had to do that made it pretty accurate?
Yeah, so it checks when they're in REM, and then it starts playing the sounds that are associated with like the lucidity cue. And so kind of the volume of the sounds increases very gradually. And essentially we're looking just for REM onset. So once it detects REM with a certain confidence, it starts escalating the sounds essentially until the person moves enough that we're really confident that they're out of REM.
Oh, okay, cool. That's kind of what like Karen would do in the lab. She's like turning the lights up until she thinks that I'm awake or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just brought it up because I think it's interesting, because there's a lot of these subtle details are like things that you wouldn't really know unless you actually did a lot of testing, like not necessarily in a sleep lab, but kind of did a lot of testing with at least people who kind of are thinking about those parameters. And I'm wondering if that's why some of these devices don't work that well, is that people think that it's just like you detect REM and you present the sound and then it's it.
He claimed that he was doing like, and seems like it would be similar with light. Like he claims he was doing that with the light. I think, I think he did with the sound too, because there was sound off. But I don't know. I think he actually didn't do it though. I think it just like was like he claimed that it would get louder and louder, but when I saw it like going off on its own, that was the other problem. It was going off on the desk, so it was detecting REM when nothing was like happening and the lights were off or something. And I feel like infrared is a little weird. Like I know some people think it's good, but I just don't think it's as accurate as EOG.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I think like there's a lot of subtleties about like how did they train this algorithm? Like how do you select the parameters too? I think kind of like you really need like a high quality sleep lab often to kind of say like, okay, is this detecting REM, or is this just detecting random eye movements, which happen in like other sleep stages? And like, does it still detect REM if kind of the orientation of the eye relative to the sensor is different a little bit? Like, I don't know, I'm a little skeptical that kind of a lot of these companies really test their stuff that much.
Yeah. And a lot of them aren't in the community so much. So it's like, that was the way we talked before in Tech for Dreaming, like how like it's just like these random companies that kind of pop up. They don't have like a huge name to themselves. They've never written like the Lucid Dreaming book or been involved with anything really going on, and they're just like making these devices that it just seems like the launch is when the testing starts, like not that there isn't like a prototype going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Not easy or cheap to do the testing against ground truth with polysomnography either. Like it's just complicated to get, like the people in the sleep lab, all the reference devices doing the analysis. Not that it's not an excuse not to do it, but it's just like it's a pretty big barrier for these small companies that have these Kickstarter projects. I mean, like it should be table stakes, but I kind of get where that gets shortcutted.
Yeah, and I also think they're just not coming in with the kind of like almost like cultural or institutional knowledge. Like there is a lot of these devices were like trying to induce like for 40 hertz brainwaves to stimulate lucid dreaming, like even at a time when like the lucid dreaming community was like pretty certain that doesn't do anything. But just you read a couple of articles about it, you don't have the broader context. So you're like, okay, let's make a device to do this. It seems really simple.
And then yeah, totally. And one interesting thing I saw in the chat that Manuel posted too was differentiating between tonic and phasic REM too. Like he was mentioning that sound and light stimuli could be better perceived in tonic REM. I don't know if anybody has, like thoughts or experience or, of kind of going one step further beyond REM to differentiating like different types of REM, and should we be detecting phasic or tonic, or like when should we apply the stimuli, or do we even know yet? Or is it an open question?
I know Ben always talks about like phasic being, maybe you can talk about that. And phasic being like the time when you get more likely to have lucid dreams.
Yeah, my overall take is that the literature is mixed and we don't really know. There's a bit of a competition between the two, because on the one hand, the sleep science literature is very clear that tonic is easier for incorporation. Like people have lower arousal thresholds. It's just generally easier from a number of different perspectives to get stimuli in. And yet on the other side, phasic REM is where lucidity is most likely to occur. And so, there's other, there are studies which suggest that the eye movements of phasic REM also may inhibit incoming stimuli from the external environment, like kind of a competition between the internal and external. It's not totally clear if that's how solid that finding is. And so we need a lot more work. That's a good starting place, is looking between more at the differences in effectiveness between tonic and phasic REM would be a good thing to do from the science side, to dig into that more, in my opinion.
It makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm thinking of, oh, go ahead, Dash.
Oh, I just like wanted to clarify a little bit for me, but also for everybody else, like the difference between tonic and phasic. My understanding is like phasic is you have more eye movements and more twitches, and tonic is the absence of some of that.
Yeah, and even how it's defined in scientific studies varies a bit from study to study. But in general, like from the clinical sleep science perspective, usually tonic REM is a complete absence of eye movements, along with an absence of myoclonic twitching. So on a polysomnography, you can see twitching in various places that can occur in the absence of eye movements. So typically, either one of those, if you see twitching or if you see eye movements, it would be labeled phasic. Whereas tonic is the absence of both of those. That's the most conservative way of defining tonic REM. Some people allow a single eye movement, for example, to be in tonic REM, and it gets a little fuzzy in terms of exactly where the boundaries are drawn and exactly how many seconds needs to happen, what the bin size is for differentiating phasic and tonic. And some people throw out the epochs that are kind of transitional between one and another. So there's some variation, but that's the big picture definition is pretty clear that phasic is defined by those two elements of the myoclonic twitching and the eye movements.
So with tonic REM in the lab, what are you looking for? Because are you just looking for like no EMG, or what kind of like biomarkers do you look if you can't rely on the eye movements?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. So you have the ongoing PSG, and one thing is that the EMG on the chin continues to be totally flat. So you have the ongoing atonia of the chin, even though you can get a little twitch phasic spikes, you have the ongoing flat EMG. So that is one of the defining characteristics. Also, the EEG dynamic itself, the electrodes that are on the scalp, do have a particular look to them, which is a bit subtle in differentiating from wakefulness. But for example, there's more predominant theta. You can have it's like sawtooth waves, for example, are characteristic of REM sleep, but also it has to do with the fact that phasic and tonic REM are typically, intermingled. So, the tonic is coming in between, so to speak, these periods of phasic REM. So you can use that as well. So it's the proximity to phasic REM without those particular characteristics in phasic REM. Does that make sense? Those are the main.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we got sleep stages within the sleep stages, in a way, or like at least it's not as simple as REM or not REM. And obviously, if we figure out like which one is best able to incorporate different stimuli, that enables us to get more precise on how we trigger that stimuli, I would think. Dash, did you want to pass it over to like either me or Jay to talk about another device, and maybe we can come back to you on the other topic?
Yeah, sure.
Unless anybody else has any other questions. I haven't been totally keeping track of the chat. If there's anything we should surface from that.
I might just
well,
oh, go ahead, Link.
I was just wondering, Dash, like, so given like your experiments, like how would you then package that into something that consumers could use? Because for the example of the light, if you don't like wearing a mask, right? I mean, kind of difficult to have the whole installation, right, of the light, and then I guess the sound, you can have headphones on, but just like curious, to know like how you have thought about this as something that could be some type of product.
Yeah, like I'm like obviously like willing to do like crazy things, like hang stuff in my room and have speakers. So I'm not maybe the best person to answer this, but like I would be fine with that as opposed to the mask. But I feel like there's definitely like more comfortable ways of having a mask. I think I even saw like there were some masks people invented which weren't even like masks, they were like headbands that like just flashed lights here, so it's not over your eyes. So and then like you could probably have the same where like there's a speaker here. So there's definitely just like more comfortable ways to design it as opposed to having it like, or just a more comfortable mask. It was just a very like, it was so flat, like because
I mean I like wearing a mask, I mean having a mask is kind of like it puts you into this mode of like, okay, now sleep is starting. So I was just wondering, is it just something general about masks, or maybe the masks have been not designed very well that you've like tried?
Yeah, I haven't tried to. Well, no, I have slept with sleep masks that were more comfortable, but yeah, I think like they're just they like the REM Dreamer Pro is probably a bit older, and like he just
clunky.
He like took a circuit board and just like placed it in the middle of your face instead of like maybe splitting it up so that like the mask could move, or like like having it a piece of it here and a piece of it here, like it would make it much more flexible, or even like using some sort of flexible circuit board. It was like literally just like a circuit board on your face. Like it was very like the design wasn't super well thought out, so that could just be improved.
Yeah, maybe that's a good segue to Somni mask then. I'm going to attempt the segue there. So I'll give a quick overview of this. I've been using this for the past couple of months. I actually found it to be really comfortable. It's one of the most comfortable sleep masks I've worn, and actually blocks out light pretty well. So this is what it looks like here. It's got, and I'm showing it on the screen here too, where it's got this module here that it has infrared sensors to detect eye movements, and it also has LEDs embedded there, and you're able to configure different color LEDs from red light, blue light, green light. So yeah, this is the kind of the schematic here on this slide. So you got this one module on the mask, and you can plug in for headphones too. I'm a side sleeper, and the headphones just wouldn't work for me. So it's just like really uncomfortable. I tried it for a few nights, and I just woke up with some pain in my ears, and like that just was kind of a non-starter. So I had to lean more on the light stimuli as I was testing this one out. And then yeah, as far as the sensors, it's got infrared sensors, and must have an accelerometer to track head movement too, because that's the two things that they cite on their website as far as tracking REM. Those are the two inputs that they cite. Infrared for the eye movements, and then tracking the head movement with an accelerometer. So this is my one slider. I give it a, on the Bryan scale, 1.5 stars out of 5 here. I do think like it was super comfortable. I'm going to start with the good. I think I'm a pretty optimistic, positive person overall. Legit one of the most comfortable sleep masks I've ever worn. I would wear it without the lucid dreaming functionality on it. But on to the bad. I just found it confusing. It's got one button on here, and you have to hold it down certain amounts for different modes. And I had to email customer support because I was holding down the one button for too long, where apparently I was getting into a test mode, not the actual like functional mode of it. And you have to understand like what different color LEDs correspond to different states. So there's just like a lot of counterintuitive things happening where you need to know like how long to push the one button down. You need to know like what the different color lights mean. It just wasn't simple and intuitive, like right out of the box. I think these devices, you should be able to take them out of the box and be able to use them without much thought. This is one you have to kind of like memorize, like how does the button work? What do the lights mean? So I found that to be kind of frustrating and not very intuitive. And then I think more importantly, I didn't have any lucid dreams that I could attribute to it. And it might be like what Dash was talking about too, where I've relatively frequent lucid dreamer, but I didn't notice any lights being incorporated into my lucid dreams while I was wearing the mask. So I couldn't peg it to the mask being the cause of any lucid dreams. But it might have just been that, maybe lucidity was triggered, but I became lucid after the lights. I don't know, but I couldn't, there was no clear cause and effect of like this device caused a lucid dream. I didn't have any of that. And yeah, if anything, I found it disruptive to my sleep too. There's a lot of false positives or false detections of REM. So like the only time I saw the lights was when I was trying to fall asleep. Then I'd get these like flashing lights in my eyes while I was trying to fall asleep. So that definitely led me to take it off in frustration at like 5 a.m. a few times, when I'm like just about to get to sleep, and then like these lights are flashing in my eyes. They do allow quite a few controls to like tune up and down the sensitivity of eye movement detection, and you can set the threshold of how many eye movements to detect before they flash the lights. So they do offer some controls around that, and I'm happy to share what that looks like. I have it on my other screen here if you are interested.
Brian, quick question: does it have a delay before it would start its REM detection? Because when I mentioned that annoying part, because there's a slow rolling eye movement stage that probably, even if it's doing, if it's detecting eye movement, it may not be, unlikely would it be good enough to be able to differentiate between that and actual REM.
Yeah, I think it's a couple hours. Are people able to see the settings screen here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is and it's a bit clunky too. You gotta plug it in with the USB, and you have to go to this website and then upload some configuration file. So it's not for you got to be a little tech savvy to even get to the configuration settings here. But yeah, I want to say there's a 2-hour delay. I'm not seeing it on this screen. I think it was in the manual. But like, so what the way I would use it is I would initiate it at the beginning of the night, but I wouldn't wear it. But then I would wear it for like the wake back to bed technique. So I'd wait until 5 or 6 hours after I fall asleep. It's like I naturally wake up around then anyways, then I would put this on. Like knowing that like the delay has been exceeded.
So what you might want to do, just as a suggestion, would be like, particularly if you're using it in the later hours of the morning, when
Yep.
you're going to, let's just say you're in a, I don't know, 90, 100-minute sleep cycle, and a good percentage of that time is actually going to be REM sleep. So
Yep.
then you'd maybe only want to have like maybe a 10 or 15-minute delay, so that it wouldn't do that annoying thing when you're actually falling asleep with the slow rolling eye movements. But then you do want it to like work, like because that's the time, so you might be trying, I don't know how well this works, but you might want to dial that time ironically down to like maybe 10 to maybe 15 minutes, however long you think it would take you to fall asleep.
No, it's a good thought. I mean, it's effectively what I was doing by like starting it at the beginning of the night, knowing there's a 2-hour delay, but then not wearing it until like 5 or 6 hours in. So I was effectively like bypassing that delay, but just like only focusing on the later part of the
Exactly. I would maybe say do it like I said, like maybe 15 minutes, and then
Yeah.
focus on using it in the later hours of the night.
Yeah. And like they do offer some flexibility here where like the default eye movement count to signal the lights is set to 30 at the beginning, so I up that to 60. You can adjust the sensitivity of the head movement, the eye sensor sensitivity, you can adjust that up and down. And it's kind of interesting, they allow you to do a red, green, or blue light on the LED. I'm not sure if anybody knows which of these is most effective for which person, but what I'm showing here is that they offer quite a bit of flexibility on the way you configure the device if you're able to navigate this. And again, it's a bit clunky. You gotta save a TXT file with the new settings afterwards. You have to like overwrite the existing file. Like reminds me of like the Windows 3.2 days of like doing some of that stuff. So like definitely doesn't feel like that much of a finished product is what I'm getting at here. Like definitely some kind of clunkiness in the user experience. Happy to talk any more about any of this if anybody's interested, but that's my overview right now. Comfortable mask, not that intuitive and wasn't effective for me is the takeaway.
Hey Brian, what's the price? Just out of interest.
Yeah, this one, let me consult this. On my other screen, I got my spreadsheet of devices here, which I can share in the chat. It is, Somni mask is about $200. So it's not necessarily cheap either.
How would you improve it?
Yeah, I had that in my slide here. So good segue if I can pull that up. Yeah, just bear with me a second here. As you see my cluttered desktop again. Oh man, hang on. Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, and I would take out the phasic based on our previous discussion. I was pegged to phasic being the right place to detect it, but it seems like that's still open for debate. So I would just say like more specific detection of REM sleep, because again, I kept getting these like false positive detections that would trigger while I'm trying to fall asleep. So better REM detection, just making it simpler. Like I shouldn't have to memorize what duration of button push corresponds to what mode. It should just be easy. And it wasn't that intuitive for me. And yeah, kind of a simple one in the third bullet, just make it more effective. Like I didn't have any lucid dreams from this, at least not any that I could attribute to it. So whether that's experimenting with different intensity of lights, maybe different kind of cadence of flashing, whatever it was, it didn't work for me. So somehow dial that in differently. And it might be like I need to kind of adjust the settings more myself too, but I didn't find anything that worked for me. So that's my
One other, Brian, were you combining it with any cognitive techniques, like in a like any kind of a functional way?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think like in more generally, I think any of these devices, I think they're better used in combination with mental techniques. Like that, I feel like that should be the foundation of any lucid dreaming practice. So I keep my dream journal. That's like for me the most fundamental thing, and really helps with dream recall. Keeping a dream journal, and then yeah, I would typically use this device in combination with the wake back to bed method. So I typically like I'll naturally wake up at least 2 times a night, which I think is probably one reason that I'm a pretty frequent lucid dreamer. But I would just put this on after I slept for like 5 hours or so. So I would combine it with that technique, like get up and walk around a little bit, get a glass of water, put the mask on, and go back to bed. So I was
I feel
stacking.
I feel like a helpful addition to a lot of these devices would be like a like glasses or something that goes over your face, and it's like for just wearing a few hours before bed that will like randomly flash lights and do the same sound so you can train to it.
It's like what Remee was talking about, how important the priming or the training is before the actual stimuli.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these masks might be best suited for nap time lucid dream induction. It's far more narrow and targeted, and it's not the whole night. And I think there's just better chances for these kinds of devices.
That's an interesting thought. I don't think any of them have been targeted at naps up to this point.
No, not purposefully, but back when the Remee was out and people were getting kind of disappointed, my suggestion for people was because it had a timer, it didn't even have REM detection. My suggestion was, make the timing during a nap. Here we go. Timing during a nap is much easier with a timer, and you can target it far better. So if you don't really have good REM detection, that's the second best use case, perhaps.
Right, and this is for people that don't know, this is the Remee. I think it gets the distinction of the cheapest lucid dreaming mask, so it wins on that dimension. But yeah, it doesn't detect REM, so it's kind of based on a dumb heuristic of just wait a couple hours and then it will flash lights when it thinks REM is more probable. Anybody else have experience using this one? I know like Jay, you've talked about it before. If you have anything else you want to add about Remee.
Well, I mean, my other than the REM detection,
Remee the device.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than I mean, I thought it was decently comfortable for a sleep mask, although I never find any of them really comfortable. It's just something about being on your face. But my biggest gripe was the lack of care from the two creators, the people who made the thing. They kind of just disappeared. They did another project that had nothing to do with lucid dreaming. As far as I don't know a single person that was able to get a hold of anyone in all of my attempts through social media, email, everything, just to even get support for the device, or people who didn't have the manual, you couldn't find it anywhere online. Like, it was just a shame. It kind of really felt like a sort of money grab, even if their original intentions were good. And to be the first out of the gate after years of no innovation. I mean, I think the REM Dreamer Pro was the only kind of imitation of the Nova Dreamer that was still manufacturing anything, that was still selling any kind of resembling device. And then the Remee came out, and it didn't have some of the fundamentals like REM detection that the Nova Dreamer had, basically like what almost 20 years before that. Just seemed kind of a absurd, but it was cheap. I guess I'll give them credit for that. And it wasn't made perfectly clear that it is also best used with training. You have to kind of train yourself to pick up on the cue. And I think they also presented it as something that, just they may have mentioned it somewhere, but for the most part, people got it thinking the lights will blink and something will happen, and magic. But that wasn't really the case.
Can I say something on that? Because I don't know if anybody answered Creation's question there about explaining why training yourself to triggers is more beneficial, but it's related to that the idea isn't that just light. Like if you get lights in your dream, you get lights in your dream all the time, right? Like if somebody flips on the lights in your house or a car drives by or window, like lights always make it in and they don't make you lucid necessarily. So the idea is that you're using the cues to reactivate some mental like concept or state that will induce the lucidity. And so the cues alone are thought to not really mean much, though they're pitched as meaningful by all of the companies and stuff. It's like, oh, these lights will make you lucid, but there's definitely a critical component there of forming an association like Pavlov's dog style with the cue, so that it activates that cognition.
So I'm not super familiar with all of these like scientific things about dreams. I just have always been a lucid dreamer. But it seems to me what I'm hearing is that what the in is a distraction from the dream itself, right? Which is what the lucidity itself, in my opinion, is, right? Is when I choose to change a dream, I have distracted the dream. Does that make sense? Rather than allowing something in the dream to distract me, to make me aware enough to change it.
That makes sense, but you're starting from when I choose to control the dream, which to me you're already ahead of the game of you're already lucid at that point, right? So this would be to give you the ability to even make that decision. In which case, then you would dream. Am I getting that right, or did I miss?
Well, I also feel like the power of lucidity comes from control.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
So with keeping that in mind is to allow myself to be unaware, so to speak, until I am triggered. Then therein kind of lies a potential problem. Like I don't really know what you guys are doing in terms of like what the purpose of being lucid is or like any of that. But from having that experience already, I feel like that could create an imbalance of control, because what happens is when I'm lucid dreaming and the dream is fighting me back, then my ability to be in control is important, right? Whereas to be dependent on the dream state already seems like just it scares me thinking that like, oh, if that's where my power comes from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I that makes me wonder, like we don't, I was saying that you have to associate the cue with some kind of cognitive state, but I think that what we don't know is like what exactly that cognitive state is. Like we think it's some kind of mindfulness reflection thing, or we
Can you
think
explain that? I don't really know at all what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's because it's like a super vague term, and I think we kind of use that intentionally, sort of. But like mindfulness being like, people think that lucidity during the dream is kind of equivalent to just being mindful while you're awake, like meditation-y type of stuff. Like think about your surroundings, and like when you're sitting in your car, listen to the wind and all these things. And if you were in your dream and you did that, you would become lucid. Probably you would notice like these things that are off a little bit, but like, because people are like, well, why aren't you lucid all the time in your dreams? But well, we're not really lucid, air quote, while we're awake. We're not thinking about what state we're in and stuff like that. So our starting point was like, well, we want to induce that like reflection or mindfulness, something, but that might not be the case. Some people think along the lines of maybe what you were getting at of like, it's actually kind of controlling the dream that might make you kind of like, oh, I'm able to do stuff, or this volition like kind of gives me the awareness of dreaming or something like that. And so that's what I'm doing now with some of my research projects, is like trying to figure out, pinpoint exactly what the cognitive process to reactivate is. Like in our the two different conditions.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I really
Okay.
wish that I had been more informed before I came to this meeting, because I really have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, well, that's my fault. That's not your fault. What we're doing in the lab, then maybe this will be clear, and if not, then you can tell me. But we have multiple conditions in this experiment, and we have, so say 10 people come in, it'll be more
What's
than
the
that.
condition?
So so say 10 people come in, 5 people, everybody before sleep is gonna get a cue, and they're gonna have it as like a sound cue, and we're gonna associate it with a cognitive task or something. And so in 5 people, they're gonna do a memory task. And so we're gonna associate a cue with the concept of memory or a memory task.
Can
And
you
then
give an
the other,
example of that?
yeah,
Like
well, we're
what?
going to ask people to hold like 3 numbers in their head repeatedly. It's like a working memory task. It's like if you had to remember a phone number for a couple minutes at a time, and we'll associate that with some kind of sound. And then, so that's one condition, is the group of people that gets a sound associated with memory. And then the other condition is 5 people that get a sound associated with self-reflection and a meditation. So while they're meditating, we'll play some sound. And then when we put everybody to sleep, they get a cue, the sound. And so we think that the people that are associating that cue with reflection and mindfulness will get lucid more, because that's just our way of testing out, like, what is the cognitive component that we want to reactivate, and hopefully one works more than the other. Did I still mess all that up?
No, I just think maybe we're coming from different directions. Like,
Uh,
is this like a, first you're going to dream about this, and in this dream, this is going to be your cue to change it in this way? Or are you saying the dream itself can be ambiguous, and then you're waiting for this thing to happen, and then you have a certain task?
Yeah, it's more B, where we don't care what they're dreaming about, because we can't really control what they're dreaming about until they're lucid. And so then once they're lucid, we play a sound, and we think that when we play that sound, it's going to reactivate whatever task they were doing before, whether that's memory or reflection. And so, like, when you do a memory task, your brain is in some state, and when you do a mindfulness meditation, your brain is in a different state. And so I think if I reactivate the meditation state, it might make you lucid more than the other.
Have you guys
Good discussion here. I want to shift gears a bit to a few other topics here. I don't want to like shortchange this too much, but I want to make sure that we got room for a few other topics.
Yeah, creation, if you want to message me like something, another question, you can do that. Although I can't promise you resolve.
And so I know, like, Dash, you had talked about wanting to present something else. I'm not quite sure what that thing is, but I'm intrigued. So this might be a good time to hit up that topic that you're thinking of.
Yeah, cool. Let me see if I could find, well, wait, I do want to find the page that it was on, but wait, am I on? Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, here it is. Let's see. Okay, well, so let me share my screen.
All right.
Oh, good. So I could just share the one page. Okay. So, like there's a few studies that look at MRIs with dreams, but it's really hard because you usually have to use like narcoleptic people who could just like sleep really well, but it's like MRIs are super loud, they're really big, they are uncomfortable, you have to like sleep in a really specific position, I think anyways, and so you can't do a lot of studies with lucid dreaming and MRI. They're also like pretty expensive, and you have to be like in a specific type of lab to get them. But they're really cool because, for example, I should have got a video of this, but there's like this project, or there's a few studies that used fMRIs to record the what's this thing, occipital lobe, the visual cortex of people's brains. They use neural networks to like map sort of like pixels of what people are seeing to videos. Basically they could like read what you were seeing with MRIs. So they could record your visual cortex and then reconstitute the images you were looking at. If they were playing a video for you, they could basically reconstitute from your visual cortex something similar to what that video looked like. It was like kind of like moving shapes, sort of similar to what the video looked like. And so it's really cool. I think there was somebody who then did like sort of successfully record dreams, I think, once, or not very many times, but I think it was done, like the same kind of technology was used to record dreams, but it's like, it's very difficult to do because, like I said, MRIs are super complicated and big and clunky and uncomfortable. But there's this like, I'm always really interested in like new technology that's like smaller and more portable and higher resolution. And like some lady from, this is like sort of old, it's just something I came across, and not super old, it's like the last 2 years or something, but this lady is working on creating this like MRI that is just like super small and can fit in a beanie. I think the updated version is a little bit clunkier than this. This might be a little old, but it was just super cool to me that this might be a possibility. Like this would be so much more comfortable to sleep with and do studies with. And she talked about like all the different things like you could maybe do with this. Like if you have 2 people wearing these, like you could do telepathy and probably like communication in a dream or something like that. And probably like some of these are things that are maybe exaggerated, but it's just really cool stuff. And what they're doing differently, because like MRI is like you have to use these huge magnets and it like changes the direction of something. Okay, I'm gonna not explain this well, but it does something to be able to take a picture of the stuff in your brain. And what they're doing is something different, which is using like, I didn't totally understand it, but there's a few, it's like using optoelectrical something. It's, oh, is that what it is? Yeah. Okay. So there's to do similar things to what MRI is doing. But so I just think this is cool and I hope this becomes a reality. There's a few other like companies sort of doing it too. So hopefully one of them really does it. So that's what I want. This could just like open up all sorts of new studies and all sorts of new applications. It's just really cool to me.
Right. And I think the broader theme there is these like big, expensive imaging techniques that we can shrink down into like a consumer electronic and bring the costs down and be able to do more of these at-home, studies and research and at greater scale. Because it's like one of the pipe dreams is doing a really big fMRI study with lucid dreamers, understanding what's happening in the brain, what are the neural correlates, but like stuff like this, like that's got to definitely unlock the potential as we can shrink it down in this form factor that's easy to use. I don't know if any of the researchers have thoughts on like just like how this kind of imaging technology is getting smaller and easier and able to be.
Yeah, I was also like, I was curious too if this really if the researchers know what kind of like tech they're using with like the opto lights and lasers, like if that really can like work like MRI, because sometimes these things are exaggerated and it's not really true. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah, this is funny, Dash, because I met Mary Lou Japson, and last time I talked to her in 2020, I even asked her if this technology, her technology specifically, could be used for lucid dreaming, where she said not really. And now you come onto this article and like you find it interesting. So
wait, why did she say no?
It's kind of, well, I guess, I mean, because you're looking specifically for technology for lucid dreaming, and she develops it from this different angle, like, So yeah, I find it also interesting how, like, you know, she said like not really, and then you come across her technology.
I
Yeah.
think the actual technology could be like, maybe she's not making it, but I mean, if it's like
But it's often,
fMRI,
I guess often, like, you know, inventors, like, they come up with some general purpose thing, and then they can't even imagine how that could be used for certain things, you know. Like, yeah.
I hope she thinks it
Yeah,
can't be.
there's all kinds of non-invasive devices like that.
I kind of like hope
What?
she thinks it can't be used for it, so that like people can repurpose it and like and not have to pay the, because she's like got all these patents on it. Well, that was like, oh, it's going to be difficult to like use for lucid dream technology. But if she thinks it's like nothing,
Yeah. She worked at Oculus, at Facebook, at Google. Like, she's kind of like pretty hardcore, like, you know, into like building hardware devices. So yeah, she's definitely one of like the leaders in the BCI space. Yeah. And her views may have changed since then, but I guess it wasn't her. It's not. I think that's not why she's doing this, right? Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the whole space is so vast. Anyway, yeah, just thought I'd mention that.
Drop tilted.
Hey, so we got a few new people here. Sorry, what are you trying to share? Something specific here?
Yeah, I'm playing Fortnite.
Okay, we're gonna. Yeah, we don't really want to watch the Fortnite. So
this isn't a Fortnite group. This is
Oh
like,
shit,
no.
bro.
Yeah.
Oh shit, my bad, bro. Hold up, let me stop. Oh, I just died. Fuck, bro.
No worries. Yeah. One more. Yeah. One more thing back to like thinking of different consumer devices that could have lucid dreaming applications. There's this Next Sense. Like, I dropped a link in the chat here. Like, it's kind of interesting. They got these earbuds that can track EEGs, or like they're getting better at tracking EEGs. And it's interesting. The founder of that is a guy from Google X named Jonathan Barrett, and he's very into like lucid dreaming technology. They're starting at like use case of seizures, detecting seizures, but I'd be interested to see if they end up kind of branching out into lucid dreaming technology over time.
Yeah, that does sound interesting, and I loved what Dash was saying about the what she was sharing about the smart hats that could be like have the MRI in them. I think that's a really what's the word, has really high potential for something like this, what we're trying to do. And I just had a thought on what creation was asking about. Sometimes people mix up lucidity and control, and like lucidity is just simply knowing that you're dreaming at the time. It doesn't require control. And not every lucid dreamer wants to control the dream. That's you don't have to. It's not a necessity. So that's just a short note on that.
And quick public service announcement. I removed the Fortnite gamers, so hopefully they find the right event.
You'd have thought that the Aura Ring link was a giveaway, but whatever.
How did they even land here? I'm puzzled.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean to like shortchange your comment, Eleanor, but I just wanted to mention
No,
that.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh shit, this isn't a Fortnite group. This has nothing to do with Fortnite.
Yeah, I felt like there's about to be a sequel there,
Fortnite.
so I wanted to cut that off before the sequel happened, whatever that was going to be.
So the EEG earbuds are interesting.
Yeah.
How much? I mean, that would be very specific data, but I'm also not really sure what data can be pulled from that location in particular.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it works. It's kind of interesting, maybe too much information, but like they reached out to me about a job thing. I'm not really like looking for other jobs, but I was thinking about like taking the call just to learn more about it too, because I was curious.
We've seen some sleep data from that company. It actually looks really good. I think one of the nice things about EEG is you can put a sensor pretty much anywhere and you can pick up activity from pretty much the whole brain. because you don't have the spatial resolution of MRI, but that also means that kind of you can put the sensor anywhere.
Right. So this is the website here. It's probably not that effective to like browse their website in real time here, but this at least gives people an idea of like what it looks like, you know. It looks like they're focused on sleep and seizures to begin with, but again, I'm thinking like just based on who the founder is and knowing he's very into lucid dreaming tech, I wouldn't be surprised if he's thinking about that for the future. It might not be the most you know, mainstream application to start with, but it's one to keep an eye on, I think.
I think one of the interesting things that I was thinking about this conversation is I think one of the big challenges is that kind of we don't even really know what the mechanism of lucid dreaming is. So it's hard when we're talking about like neuroscience to even know like what we should be doing or what we should be looking at. Like, I think kind of like what Remee was saying about his experiments, and then also Dash, like, I think all of these existing things try to like operate on the principle of like, okay, you try and get the person to realize they're in a dream, and that like sort of works, but not very well. But I think it is a big open question about just kind of like, what is the difference between someone who's in a lucid dream and someone who's in a normal dream? And we don't really have a great handle on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You know, I mean, specifically, I think all these companies basically, they just take whatever scientific evidence exists as to like what creates a lucid dream or what triggers it specifically. But like, we don't really have, you know, scientific like evidence or like really like much in terms of like what actually, you know, triggers someone to become lucid, right? And I think that's a really important question to like answer on a sort of academic and scientific level before we then able to just like, otherwise we're just mashing all these things together, right? All these different things and like confusing people, and like nobody really knows what's really effective. And we're not going to be able to create something that's really effective. And so sometimes like, yeah, it'd be good to just have also conversations about, you know, sort of foundational scientific level, like what actually creates this, because that's a really important question. Even like lucid dreaming communities, they get so much into like, okay, what do you do when you're lucid and all this stuff, but like what's the moment of inception, you know? That's like it's like the most important question. And like, yeah, I agree like with what you said previously. So it would be good to talk about this more like, you know, scientifically across the community, because like, I mean, if we solve that problem, right? I mean, then it's like the beginning of everything, because that's when all this, there will be more people coming in, more funding, more consumers, like literally, like, you know, it will change everything. But like, nobody has solved that question, you know, really. So, or that problem, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, like it's a tech for dreaming group, but I think it is very much still kind of a basic research question now too. It's like, it's a tough one. Like, even if we can find that like certain brain networks are associated with lucid dreaming, that doesn't necessarily mean that like stimulating those networks will make you have a lucid dream. It may be that just those networks are a marker that you're more awake or you're more aware or something. Maybe that's just something incidental about the brains of frequent lucid dreamers. It's a really, really tough problem, but a really tough basic research problem. And we need a lot more of that, I think.
Yeah, and it may not be resolved just like from academia alone, right? I mean, it may be something, you know, where we need other industries and other groups of people to like collaborate on this in some way. Yeah, because it's actually a very practical thing, and like sometimes academia doesn't like care about very practical things, you know. Yeah.
Well, and to follow your question, Daniel, I guess I think Ben brought it up in his presentation. I'm not sure, Ben, so, you know, but my bad for quoting you. But you thought it might be of interest to find out, or I think I asked it actually, Craig here. What's the mechanism for why galantamine seems to have, you know, pretty considerable success? Is there anything more known or postulated about that? Because it does seem to be a pretty strong factor compared to just other supplements or even technologies. If we can sort of nail that down, that could maybe get some of the brain part.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I agree completely. I think the galantamine finding isn't the end of that. It's interesting that galantamine works so well, but to me, it's the biggest clue for where to look next in terms of what's changing in the brain that makes us so much more likely to become lucid. So that's probably the number one study I'd really like to see, is a brain scanning study with galantamine. I think that could tell us a lot. So yeah, I completely agree. But no, as far as I know, no one's done it yet because it is expensive and demanding in a lot of ways. Having some of these new technologies would really be a huge help, because the big hurdle is really getting people, to have good REM sleep in the scanner that doesn't cost $500 an hour to run. So I'm really curious about this system that goes in the ski cap, because I don't quite understand whether it's optical imaging or something like FNIRS. I don't think it can be classic fMRI, because that does require a huge magnetic field, unless they've cracked some different way of doing that. But
I think it is something like FNIRS or like related to that, because that's light related, right?
Yeah, it's optical, ultimately based on like infrared. So
I'll share the page.
Like Ben, like 25 masks you could ship out for $10 each to your subjects.
And she was saying it's like made from like LEDs or something. Yeah, so it's just like light or something. Let me share.
So maybe that's near infrared.
What the F is.
It sounded like it was a combination of some things when I looked at the website. The website might be a little more updated than this article. The website on the company is called Open Water, but this is the article I looked at, which with little like videos of her talking about applications for it and stuff. So it was interesting.
yeah, and I saw someone link to Kernel. They've also got that kind of like helmet FNIRS system that they are interested in using on lucid dreaming. But it's pretty heavy. So that system is, nothing like the one you showed. The one you showed looks amazing, where it's just like, having a beanie on your head. I do worry about the Kernel device a little bit, because just getting people to sleep with that, you have to do it very carefully in a specific setup, like probably in a specific kind of chair, which is taking the weight off and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think they'd have to modulate it specifically for sleep. That probably as is wouldn't work, but the technology is fascinating.
Yep.
Okay, this is enabled by novel LCDs with pixels small enough to create holographic images, coupled with the use of body temperature detectors and complex software. So that, but when I saw like the updated prototype, it wasn't as like nice as this beanie. So I don't know if there is going to be one like this beanie, but I definitely like the beanie version.
You have the link?
Oh yeah, I sent it in the
Nope.
Oh sorry, I sent it directly to creation. Okay, let me send it to everybody.
And yeah, it seems, if I can attempt a summary on that discussion, it seems like we need more fundamental research on like what's happening in the brain, how do lucid dreams arise in the brain. Really expensive to run that on current equipment, right? Like putting people in a MRI machine, $500 per hour, not very accessible, but like it's way more accessible if we can get it into a ski cap, which if you put the faith in technology, it's going to happen, like hopefully the next few years, and then we can start to crack the nut more, like really map the territory more, to even like figure out like what is the parameter space that we can play with. It's right now it's I think, as somebody said, it's kind of like shooting in the dark right now, as far as like what kind of stimulation to use, how to target it, what kind of dosage, all that stuff.
I do think an interesting way of kind of, so it's like there's brain scanning, but then I think the other thing that is potentially interesting is just like hooking people up to different kinds of nerve stimulators and seeing what happens. So like I wanted to do a study like that just looks at like, if you do vagus nerve stimulation, does that change the rate of lucid dreaming? And the idea is like, maybe, I mean, these things are all kind of neuromodulatory systems. You can maybe shift the brain's like just the neuromodulators in the brain in a way that's conducive to lucid dreaming by doing things like nerve stimulation or blue light exposure while people are asleep or vibrotactile stimulation. I think that's another area to explore is in addition to imaging, just kind of looking at like what happens if we give people more sympathetic input, stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes me think of, I think it was Jay that dropped it in the Tech for Dreaming Discord server about this ammo device. It's supposed to stimulate the vagus nerve to promote more, I think, more parasympathetic activity. So more of like higher HRV, lower heart rate. I'll drop the link to that one in the chat too, if anybody's interested. But yeah, maybe there's devices like that that you could, apply some stimulus and see what the effect is too from kind of the other angle versus starting from imaging.
Hey Brian, Craig here. And this might be right up your alley too, and maybe you're already doing it, I don't know, and hopefully I'm not unveiling some tech secret, but there seems to be a correlation or possibly a way to detect REM pretty good just from finger movements. Are you guys doing that with Aura?
We, at least the most recent sleep algorithm, which we have that published, and I can find that link and drop it in the chat too if that's of interest to people. But we use like for that one, we're using a combination of motion, heart rate variability. We also get temperature at a 1 minute intervals, and then also respiratory rate derived from the optical signal. So for that, we're using a whole variety of different signals. I'm not sure like what kind of percentage or like what kind of accuracy would get, which is the kind of the motion component of that. I'm not sure what that breakdown looks like. I'm sure like we have that data somewhere. I'm just not sure, but I could I could see the potential of that maybe being good enough if you think of like the body being paralyzed during REM sleep, and if we could sufficiently pick that up with a lack of movement, it probably wouldn't be very accurate, but maybe it's good enough for this. I wouldn't bet on it, but long way of saying, yeah, we use more inputs than just that for REM detection. But yeah, maybe it's a good proxy for the right use case. One more thing I thought of, and maybe this is just to give a shout out to Ben, who's here. He's got the recent publication around, well, they talk about a variety of things, but one of them is around disproving some of the 40 hertz, signal in the front of the brain during lucid dreams, attributing that more towards the muscle movements with associated with eye movements. So I'll drop the link to that in the chat, and that's something that Ben had talked about in a previous meetup. So I'm not mentioning it to have him review all those results, but I wanted to at least drop the link here so people are aware of that publication. I thought that was well done. So I'm going to drop the link here. Oops.
And there was a device, I think Kickstarter or Indiegogo, don't quote me which, but jumped right on that finding from Voss, which, by the way, I'd known about the 40 hertz or the gamma spectrum anyway for many, many years for biofeedback, knew about it for inducing spiritual states or being present at least. So it wasn't anything too new. But then they created a device right away and took all the funding and were... And then about 6 months later, I don't know if anybody remembers the project, they apologized publicly and gave all the money back because they realized it absolutely doesn't do anything to induce lucid dreaming. And at least on their account, they showed up for being honest and such. But sort of has jumping the gun too fast on one research study is probably not the wisest.
Was that the Lucid Catcher?
That's what I'm sure. I'm not sure about the name. I think Europe, but I could be wrong about that. it could be that, but it was to stimulate. It actually had like electrodes to stimulate with like, I guess, slight shock or slight electrical induction for temple.
I think taking a chance in developing technology based on even one study like that is not crazy, but releasing a device and claiming that it does X or Y and it works and all that, that's where I get upset. Like, you know, go ahead and take a chance on stuff that's not validated, or it's a thread to pull on, or it gives you some data potentially, but the fact that there were several Kickstarter campaigns with this claim was
scary.
Yeah,
you can devalidate the whole tech for dreaming like model.
But
I agree with you. You know, so there's got to be some explorer out there who goes for something and then 1 out of 10 hits. So if it's a research project, subtle, maybe beta test or this and that.
Right. I think this is a good topic in its own right. That I'm sure we could spend a lot of time on too. Is just like been a lot more marketing hype than actual effective devices in the space to date. Can anybody think of like what would be the most reputable device at this point? Would it be ZMax or does anybody have like favorable impressions of any of the devices out there right now?
Just Karen Conkley, shining light for you.
Yeah. Karen in the lab twisting the knobs with the right intuition.
I don't know. I think there are devices, but there's stuff like brain stimulation headsets made by Esoterics and just sold as like a general brain stimulation headset. Because I think when you start claiming like, oh, this is definitely going to make you have lucid dreams, that's when it becomes unreputable.
Yeah, it's the same like meditation, you know, it's like you can't take a pill and then all of a sudden you can meditate, you know, and lucid dreaming is like really just nighttime version of meditation. And so many of the products, they don't really teach people, right? Or like they don't take data over like a long time, like day and night, and really like figure out like patterns. Like it's more like, okay, even galantamine, it's like this whole, okay, just take it and then, you know, it's like, how can we actually train people like throughout sort of like their day and night and then figure out their patterns? And like none of these products really do that, right? They're all like claiming and like you do this, you press a button and like and sometimes like lucid dreamers, like they forget what it was when you were not able to lucid dream, you know? And that's actually really difficult because most people in the world do not even know what lucid dreaming is, right? They don't even know how to lucid dream. And like that barrier is very difficult. Yeah. And sometimes like the lucid dreaming community is so insulated. They already know how to do it. Like, but like, okay, how can we get everyone to do it? You know? And so that's really the big question here.
Yeah. I think that's a huge issue when we're doing these studies, like with the galantamine or with other things, is you're looking at people who like went to a lucid dreaming retreat. And I would bet that like those people actually have some unusual genes or unusual brain physiology that is also playing a part in like why they respond to those things. And actually the majority of people might respond very differently, or it might just not work. And I think in the lucid dreaming community, we talk a lot about what works in this very weird subset of people.
I think we have to study. We have to study all the natural lucid dreamers, the ones that just have a lucid dream every night and have for most of their lives. These are just, you know, just dissect them and cut them open. I'm kidding. We need to really understand what the differences are to the degree that we can. But I'm even curious about what is the extent of our understanding about the differences in the brain neurochemistry and brain states and brain behavior between sleeping and waking too. Like I know that we know a lot, but we haven't, mapped it out completely. And there must be clues there as well, just in terms of awareness. Again, the changes we're talking about, like things like access to memory and, self-reflection and so on. So I don't know, we haven't covered the spectrum there.
you know,
Something like a
several,
little grid, Jay, where over, let's say, the course of a 7.5 or 9 hour sleep, you can have little slots of which part of the brain's on or off. Wouldn't that be great?
yeah, I think there's a bunch of good threads we could pull on there. Actually, my 2-year-old is walking in, so he's going to make a guest appearance every event. It's like the literary device to show the passing of time. So, hey,
That's why. That's the only
yeah,
reason I stay
hey,
until 8 o'clock.
hey, no, well, he's a toddler now. You turned 2 on Saturday.
Can you say hi to everybody?
You say hi. All right, he doesn't want to play.
You say bye-bye? Can you say goodnight?
Bye-bye.
Probably like Lucid 24/7, that little guy.
He's my wake back to bed baby, so he helps me with the wake back to bed technique. Fortunately, less than what he used to. Because at the early going, when I was totally sleep deprived, it was actually like kind of a help for lucid dreaming, because at least for whatever kind of cocktail I have in my brain, it's I tend to have a lot more frequent lucid dreams when I'm sleep deprived. Like I can just kind of slip more directly from waking state to lucid dreaming state. So it's kind of an interesting, unconventional lucid dreaming technique with him. Anyways, I was starting to talk about like various threads we could pull on there with the previous comments. And I think like one link that you had talked about is a good one too, about like, why isn't it more popular? And I think there's just not many people have gone deep in lucid dreaming. It's difficult to access, and like people don't know they want it. I didn't know I wanted to lucid dream more until I started having like pretty profound lucid dreaming experiences like a few years ago. Then I discovered it and was thinking like, everybody should know how to do this. This is amazing. There's so many things to explore here. But I think like if you haven't experienced it, you haven't tasted that, you don't know what you're really missing at that point. And I think that's like, maybe that's a role to play for things like galantamine. If you want to do like a bigger 8 milligram dose, if you can at least give somebody that kind of initial introduction to it, even though it's maybe not like the most way to do it. It's kind of like analogous to
right. I mean, I know what you're
experience
saying,
of
and like,
meditation.
you're right, but like we can't like, you know, sell this, oh yeah, just take this like 2 pills, you know, 8 milligrams, you know, and to have this experience. It's kind of like yeah, like I hear you, but like, you know, and like, yeah.
But even
it's
that
like,
should be wrapped in,
yeah.
even that should be wrapped in like the right mental techniques, right? Too, where it's like you should do a dream journal for like a week or 2 beforehand, and there should be the right, you know, caveats and caution ahead of time to like, don't do this every night. You don't want to build a dependency. Don't take it if you have conditions XYZ, you know, but maybe it's a way for people to like get the first taste of it, and then they're more motivated to like put the habits in place after that.
Has anyone tried the limits of galantamine? Because they say 8 milligrams, right? Has anyone tried like 20 milligrams, or like, does it even matter? Like, like if you take more, or like?
Those are the guys who aren't on the call.
Sounds like a bad idea.
It's so harsh. Like it would sometimes like it either I can't sleep because it's giving me a stomach ache, or I have a lucid dream. So it's like it's already kind of harsh at the recommended dose.
Right.
Dash, do you feel that?
I'll also say, so overdosing galantamine, that's actually used as a chemical weapon. It like makes you stop breathing, essentially. It's like the same thing that would happen if you got hit by nerve gas. So like, I wouldn't really recommend it.
Yeah,
that would be at a much higher dose, though. I mean, but we don't know what the optimal dose is for lucid dreaming. That hasn't really been pinned down.
I still want to test my theory of delayed release and slow release galantamine.
I like
that. And see what we can do with that.
At least helps with the ability if you don't have to wake up to dose it, right? You know, if you get this extended or delayed release 5 hours after you go to bed.
My research has shown that we don't have anything that delays by more than an hour. Or maybe Nathan, you linked to something, or last time we talked about this, but and that's really hard to do, because then you just, if you wait too long, you just pass it basically. But I don't know. Yeah.
Could you take galantamine in like different ways? Like I don't know, like a spray or something, because then you could just have like a timer that sprays it, but like, or intravenously or something, like some other way that you could delay it.
You could get your lab tech person, maybe, if you had an IV. I don't know if that's going to go mass market.
Yeah, it's time for the
IV you can
spray.
automate. Yeah, IV you can automate. What about, okay,
Only
you know how like those
People do rent IVs though. That is a thing. That's a kind of popular thing now.
do we have like a Dexcom but in revert, like a you know, one of those patches that releases, that it's a timed release thing, you know, basically like either through the skin. Oh, there we go. Are you monitoring your blood glucose?
Yeah, this is I'm wearing the Abbott CGM. So this is it's tied to a CGM app called Super Sapiens. So if anybody wanted to see it, I was compelled to show it as Jay was talking about it. Didn't mean to distract too much though.
No, that's dope.
Yeah.
So there is a technique called iontophoresis where essentially you can like use electric charge to either drive a medication through the skin or prevent it from diffusing from the skin until you turn the current off. And I don't know, I was looking at it a while ago. It looks like it could potentially work with galantamine. It might work better like if you had like, you could have a patch that you put in your mouth or something and the current retains the galantamine in the patch until it shuts off, and then it can start to diffuse through the mucous membranes. But I don't know how, like, I don't know like if you could get enough of it through the mucous membrane.
I've seen melatonin patches, and of course there's nicotine patches. Can everything be absorbed through the skin? That can't be right?
It depends on like the size of the molecule and its electric charge. So in theory, I think because the galantamine is slightly charged, you could in theory deliver it with an iontophoresis patch. So you put a patch on the skin and you run an electric current through it when you want it to go in. But I just don't know if you could get a useful amount into your body that way.
Right. Interesting. Very
remote
interesting.
control capsule that you can trigger from your app and then recover at the end of the night. That you swallow and you get it later. I mean, we're being crazy, but sometimes crazy is a good way to sort of come up with pretty good ideas, right?
No, I think either material science will eventually be up to the challenge, or like maybe this kind of patch technique. I know there's more and more around like micro needle arrays where like the experience is like putting on a sticker, but it at least penetrates into the interstitial fluid, so you can at least deliver things there without like, yeah, it's penetrating the skin, but it doesn't hurt. So like from the user experience, it feels like putting on a sticker. So that, even if it sounds painful, if it's not, like maybe that's excessive. Like
I thought one of those sleep stickers have done is that they have different layers, and the first layer takes time to dissolve, and then the thing that they want to administer is in the second or third layer. So that's how they kind of time the delay.
I mean, I read the papers on galantamine, but can someone pinpoint exactly why galantamine is like so effective? Like, what exactly does it do that it triggers lucidity so much better than anything else? Like,
I think that's the magic question, isn't it?
Well,
We don't know.
Kristen Lamarca, like in the paper, said she had like 4 thoughts of what it was, and it was like one of them was increasing phasic REM. One of them was like something about making you more goal oriented or something like that. And I don't remember the other 2. I think it had to do with like neuromodulation, increasing. Oh, and the other one is like increasing acetylcholine.
The inhibitor, right? Something. Do we believe that that's the main mechanism?
I think, I don't know. They were like, that's what I always thought, but then she had these like 4 hands of what it was.
It inhibits the enzyme that breaks down galantamine, right? So then you build up.
It breaks down
acetylcholine. Sorry, it like disrupts the enzyme that breaks that down, so you accumulate more acetylcholine in your brain.
Yeah, I think I wrote that paragraph. I wrote almost the whole paper, actually. So it's mean, these are all super speculative. We really don't know. And I mean, if you ask Stephen, the reason that he came up with this in the beginning was because of acetylcholine and the relationships they found in the prior work linking lucidity to phasic activity. So height and other kinds of heightened central nervous system activation. So the thought that he had was basically, since acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter in REM sleep, if you could increase it, you could ramp up brain activation. And so it's fairly coarse-grained, like the original thoughts that led to testing it in the first place was simply ramping up brain activation in REM sleep, since the prior research had shown that higher brain activation went with lucidity. But it definitely is an open question because as you were pointing out, I mean, galantamine is also used for memory, for treating memory impairments. There could be a cognitive effect on memory that's part of the effect here. Also, it's possible that other neurotransmitter systems may be influenced. It is known that these acetylcholinesterase inhibitors don't act completely just on acetylcholine. They can also influence dopamine, norepinephrine, and some of the others as well. Like pretty much every major neuromodulatory system in the brain can be influenced. So it actually, like, this is something we've discussed a lot, is it could be partially mediated through something else. Like, it's very plausible that it's cholinergically mediated, but some or part of the effect could be through a different neuromodulator. And that, I think, would be really interesting to test from the science point of view. You could try combining galantamine, for example, with substances that either inhibit or promote dopamine, et cetera, to see whether that would boost the effect more or decrease it, for example.
Now that's an interesting idea. I like it.
Or just supplements, maybe. Has anybody know about research where they just tried like specific supplements? Let's say acetylcholine or some smart drug that has it.
Like just give people like 5-HTP or something.
Yeah, one at a time, and then maybe in pairs. You know, kind of. Obviously, it's a bit of you need some budget. But
well, there's this book on supplements. He talks about all of that, like how you mix them and how it works well together. I'm not aware of other books like that.
Which book?
It's
Brian showing it.
I mean, I'm the prop guy tonight. I'm like Carrot Top over here. All of, like the props on standby here.
What happened to the guy? Like, he hasn't written anything since then, right? Because this is a really good book.
I was looking him up. I wanted to like reach out and see if he'd be down to join an event at some point, but I ended up down the Reddit rabbit hole, and they're like, the guy's disappeared, or like there was speculation that I don't know. The short answer is I'm not sure. Yeah. But yeah, pretty interesting book where like it's at least the most in-depth one on supplements for lucid dreaming that I'm aware of. I can drop a link to that in the chat too if people are interested.
But yeah, I don't know, that's something that I'm really curious about in general. It's just if you like poke the various neuromodulatory systems, do you get more lucid dreams or less lucid dreams, or what happens? Another one I've been really curious about is, so people who have narcolepsy all seem to lucid dream more readily. And there's actually a drug now called suvorexant, which kind of replicates some of the neurology of narcolepsy. It blocks orexin signaling, which is what's missing in narcolepsy. So I've been curious about if you give healthy people this anti-orexin drug, if that would help them have more lucid dreams.
Yeah, that's super interesting too. I can't pretend to know much about narcolepsy, but my naive perspective was like maybe they're just better to like transition directly from waking to the dreaming state so they can like maintain more of their awareness into the dream. But yeah, like what you're saying totally makes sense. Good thing to
I always thought it was like it's like being sleep deprived and dropping straight into REM when you do fall asleep, or kind of like a nap. They're basically napping all the time, but only napping, never really
When
sleeping. I
you're,
don't know.
because when you're in a REM deficit, like you're gonna want to prioritize that. Like if you like really haven't gotten REM in a while, your body's gonna be like, okay, I need to like start getting some REM. So I could see going directly from waking to REM in that case.
I mean, I have a guess about it, which kind of fits with other things I've seen subjectively more than statistically. That their sleep cycle or circadian rhythm generally is just kind of messed up. And so I guess they get their different waking chemicals right in the middle of a narcoleptic nap, more likely to kind of have part of the brain wake up in the middle of sleep kind of thing. That's my guess, but it could be anything, I guess.
Oh, and Craig, not to put you on the spot, but have you tried out that Dream Cube yet? The one that
No,
sends out
sorry.
magnetic fields.
I just finished 2 major projects. I have it sitting here. Actually, I couldn't get it open because I was going to try to find a way to charge it. So
What is this?
give me a hint. Yeah, maybe give the people 2 minutes, or I know very little about it other than that it almost got thrown in the garbage because they were afraid of it where I was receiving it.
Yeah,
oh my
I
God,
shipped
what
it.
is this thing? It's a bomb,
I shipped it to Craig's friend in Florida, and they thought it was a bomb, so it ended up in a dumpster. But they got it out. It was shared with me at somebody at Aura. They were friends with one of the co-founders. So it's this cube out of Russia that sends like magnetic waves out that's supposed to induce lucid dreams. I can try to find the website for it, but there might not be a website anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't
Anyways, I
work.
couldn't
This
figure out how
I
to
looked
power
up.
it. Never got a chance to test it.
What could go wrong?
Did you manage to get it open? Like, did you ever get it open?
I never opened it.
Okay, because I don't want to break it. That's the only other thing.
I mean, like at this point, like I can't really use it, so feel free to hack away.
Push a little fur. Push a little.
Yeah,
further.
and if you break it, you break it. It's not like I'm not worried about it.
Okay, I'll give you a report here. I'll push it a little harder. I'm moving it to the inbox.
All right, it's queued up. I don't have high confidence it'll work.
If you don't see me on any more Zoom chats, something happened. It might be negative, but it was drastic.
It's the lucid dreaming version of Pandora's box. All right, I know we're a bit over time here, but yeah, I'm okay staying for a bit longer if people have other, topics they still want to discuss at this point. So happy to leave, space for that too. Any other topics or things that people wanted to talk about that hasn't been talked about yet?
As I think it's later here for me. I just have a couple of questions specifically for Brian and Craig. Brian, is there a way to upgrade the Somni mask once you have it? Like, I know there's probably going to be future versions of it, but you said it wasn't that great. Would you be able to like download an upgrade for it if there was like a future version, or would you have to buy a new one?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure how that would work. They do have quite a bit of like ability to adjust the different settings. But yeah, not sure.
I was just. And then my question for Craig is, do you know, I know the Nova Dreamer was discontinued some like 18, 20 years ago, and you can only, and they keep the Lucidity Institute keeps saying they're going to come up with a Nova Dreamer 2. Good luck with that. I'm not holding my breath on that one. But do you know why they stopped making the Nova Dreamer? I may have asked this before, but I've completely forgotten.
It's a bit of a loaded question, or the answer is a bit of a loaded answer. It's a little diplomatic thing. I'll just mention generally that I had a pretty strong role in having it not produced and shared anymore.
Oh, it's a personal question here, so.
Yeah. Well, it's an important question though, because it ties upon, I think, what everybody who's ever developing or exploring this stuff should really ask, and that is, what's the aim and how am I marketing this? Is it positive generally? And in our cultural, and even maybe hidden behind our eyes, we can't see, the blue glasses we're wearing and we don't see that things are blue, is that technology is a great thing that can like make us do whatever or get us this thing quick and easy, like a galantamine pill, like a dream mask. Unfortunately, that belief coupled with sort of lucid dreaming and something that my belief is probably should at least be organically empowered, grown in an empowered way first, isn't great, because then if somebody gets the mask, and I saw this a lot, they get an overdreamer, they have a few lucid dreams because yes, it's new, it's fresh, it's got some features, it gets you excited. And then they don't have any, they drop it and forget about it. So is it actually having a positive effect? As a research tool, I always thought it was excellent. As a mass market, magical lucidity device, dangerous.
So basically you're saying the world wasn't ready for it because it was like, if not the first lucid dreaming mask that there was.
I don't know about ready for it, but it has to be considered a little more carefully as to how it's marketed and what's the aim, and is it overall more effective, to serve people and humanity. I think every tech should ask that. I asked that about the Nova Dreamer, and in fact, I don't know if somebody mentioned before there's a promising mask or device there. I don't know what the name of it is, but I was talking to some Europe group because they were interested in, I guess, picking my brains about a new device, kind of like the next Nova Dreamer, but with EEG. And I said, well, first of all, really decide if you want to do technology as your life, because that's what it's going to be. It's a company, it's a whole different ballgame than a research. And second of all, I would say do many years as a research project and go after researchers as like sort of a side. Don't go mass market at the start. It's not a good model, because you might have more detrimental effect to your company, or even worse, you might have more detrimental effect to people. And they actually, as far as I know, took that advice, and they're going around to a bunch of research conferences and just sort of really developing it, and I think using it mainly for that. And then eventually I think it could work as a mass market device. So they're doing it right. And please forgive me, I don't know the name of that device, but I could find out who did it. It's this group from Europe, I think Germany.
And are they looking to get validation from researchers? Is that first step?
Well, one of my things was that's going to be the most easiest crowd to get money from, because they usually have a little bit of budget if they have a sleep lab. And also, you want to really watch your public image. So they were kind of like listening to those things. I mean, they just took my comments and I never heard from them. But I saw the actions they were doing was they kind of went that route. Whereas I think they were heading to just like put it on Kickstarter and get like, 10, 20,000 printed, like the Remee kind of thing, which, as we know, didn't really serve people, has a little bit of a negative impact because it's kind of an alarm clock strapped to your head. And also the fly-by-night, they kind of just took off and didn't want to do any tech support because they didn't charge enough. So there's a lot of subtler questions behind just making someone lucid, like the business side, the cultural perception, what beliefs. So that's a long answer, sorry, Laura, but that's kind of why I ended up sort of having an influence, I believe, on Stephen and Lucidity Institute and having the mask not produced publicly. And I actually gave interviews about it many times since that, of sort of the two sides of technology. I love it, I'm here, I designed it, I have other designs, but it's got to be considered pretty carefully from bigger picture viewpoint.
And I'm signing off for the night. It's 11:30 here, and I got to get to bed.
Good question. So
Sounds good. Yeah, and thanks for joining. And yeah, maybe that's a good place to wrap it. Although I see Jay, you went off mute. Do you have a?
No, I have to run as well. So I wanted to just thank you for putting this together and for everybody showing up. And these are always enjoyable.
Can I ask Craig one question?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Since can you maybe to leave on an optimistic note? So from your perspective and experience, what do you think is sort of like the way to go about building something like this? You mentioned it a little bit, but what else comes to mind as to what's important to keep in mind as we're developing this?
Well, kind of what I said. I think go slow. At least maybe like the app. I imagine. I don't know for sure, but the things Brian's using now, is it the Somni? They have an app associated, which probably has a lot. I'm guessing or hoping, for their point of view, that the mask just has kind of sensors and maybe the stimulants in there, the LEDs or the sound, but it doesn't have too much internal smarts. Or at least the internal smarts is based on whatever the app tells it, because then it's really easy to upgrade from the Apple iTunes store, like every for most of the apps on my iPhone, I get an update every month or every week or whatever. That would be a really smart way to go. So have whatever device it is easily controlled by something that's very easily spreadable. Because to have to somebody send in a mask is just never going to work, really bad. If it updates through a software download, I don't know if Aura Ring does that. That could be useful. They still have to go to the website, download it. It's a bit more of a job, and they might not know they don't have the right version. So make it really easy, super user-friendly to update, because I guarantee you there's going to be lots of updates as we learn more. So that's kind of where I'd start. But actually, that'd be my second step. My first step in is, do I want to go into really the direction of making technology for lucid dreaming? And I never got a full yes from myself for that after the Nova Dreamer. I was like, there's promising stuff there, but it goes with the belief of the quick fix. No, I decided more to go towards empowering technologies, techniques, different things like that. So, but I don't diss it. I don't have any negatives about it. I'd kind of go think big picture, and then lots of research and testing. And something like this group might be an excellent place. If I don't know if you're considering or you know somebody, I'd say just pass like 5 devices to some people who are super keen. You get a lot of data, a lot of feedback. That's a really smart. It's like slow growth model. I don't know if that's helpful or if there's anything too fresh in there, but
Totally. And I think I think any technology should be coupled with those fundamentals too, or that footing in these mental techniques, not as
scruples,
not as a quick fix. And I think the field rightfully faces a credibility issue at this point too. Again, a lot of marketing hype with these crowdfunding campaigns that haven't really delivered on any results too. So I think any future successful device needs to proceed with that in mind and go the extra effort for validation and like gain that credibility, like earn it.
I like that.
And I'm hopeful this group can play a role in that. It's not going to happen overnight, but technology is only going to keep getting better and better and more capable, and our understanding of like the physiology and the science behind it, it's only going to keep getting better and better. So I think this like really see a complementary relationship between the research community and like people developing projects in this space too. That's why it's awesome to see like researchers join the call too. And I think like this kind of group can foster that kind of two-way communication between the science and like some of these projects that are progressing in the space too. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for tonight, and definitely thank everybody for joining. I will I'll post the video on YouTube, and stay tuned for future events. I always update them on the techfordreaming.com/events page. So yeah, we'll plan to keep these going. Aim for once a month, but sometimes realistically it might be like once every 2 months kind of thing. But yeah, definitely won't be the last one. We'll keep it going. And good discussion today. Thanks everybody.
Great, Brian. Don't forget your little lucid dreamer is going to
See ya.